Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Influential Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and as a mom and lawyer, I want to be a cheerleader for moms who don't want to give up their own goals and dreams. Around here, we celebrate moms who are making a difference and talk about ways to juggle work, motherhood, goals, faith, self-care, and more. I'm so glad you're here. The only filters we use around here are coffee filters, so pour yourself a cup and enjoy the show. On today's episode of Influential Motherhood, I am honored to be here with Stacey Simms, who has a really neat story about being a former TV reporter and a radio host, and is a mom of two, and now hosts what I think is a really important podcast called Diabetes Connections. And the story behind that is pretty incredible. So Stacey, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So there's so much to your story. And, I've listened to your podcast and just love the way that you have set up your show and the guests that you've brought on. But let's back up a little bit and let's just learn a little bit more about you and your family. So just tell us a little bit about your family and a little bit more about what your career has been like. And then we'll start getting into diabetes and what it's like being a parent to a child who received a diabetes diagnosis.
Sure. Wow. So I was one of those lucky people who always knew what they wanted to do, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? I always knew that I was going to be a TV reporter for whatever reason. And I was so fortunate because I was able to do that. I started working in radio in college. I got a job pretty much right out of school as a TV reporter in the middle of nowhere and, worked my way up, wound up in Charlotte, North Carolina, 20 years ago, actually, this fall, and started working at WBTV. I moved here to Charlotte with my husband. We had last been in Syracuse, New York, where I went to college, and we escaped the snow and came down here.
Good move.
And I worked for 3 years at the CBS affiliate here in Charlotte at WBTV as the health reporter. During that time, I had a baby, had my daughter, and I went back to work. But I'll be honest with you, I wasn't excited at work at that time anymore. Something had really changed. I didn't want to be home necessarily all the time. I loved my work. My goals hadn't changed, but I just couldn't get into what I was doing. So I made a switch and I started working at a radio station doing the morning show at WBT, also here in Charlotte. And radio had been my first love. Never thought I'd really do it, though. I thought I was going to be a stepping stone to television. Went back to radio. I worked there for a decade. The only there's lots of crazy things, but the craziest part was, you have to get up for that morning show at 2:30
Oh my goodness.
in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
That's the middle of the night.
Right. So, and I had another baby. So I had two little kids, and it actually worked really well for the first couple of years because they would go to bed at 7:30, and so would I.
Yeah, you had to.
Right, you had to. It was great. But my husband he owned and worked at a restaurant. So he was gone every night, and it wasn't where he could really call in sick or, have time off. When he owned it, he had to be there. And restaurant business is even crazier than radio. So when my oldest child was in middle school, I really was burning the candle at both ends, and something had to give. And I started really feeling the effects of that terrible schedule and not sleeping. So we decided as a family to make a big change. And I left and I started working for myself. And that's the long story short of how I got to Diabetes Connections podcast now 4 years ago.
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, so it's interesting to me to hear that, it's like you said, the radio piece you thought would be a stepping stone, and then it actually kind of launched you backwards into towards audio and voice work and into podcasting. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So your podcast is called Diabetes Connections and is just incredibly made. You can tell that you have a history in radio. And I love the way that I know it's a lot of time and work that goes into it, but it's an incredibly made podcast, and it's such important information, and the stories that you help share are just incredible. So tell us how you got to the point of hosting a podcast about diabetes specifically, because this involves your very young son, if I remember correctly, being diagnosed with diabetes. So can you take us back and tell us about that diagnosis?
Sure thing. So as I had said, I had one child in 2001, my daughter Leah, and my son Benny was born in 2004. Right before he turned 2, actually a couple of months before he turned 2, he started, not really being himself. His personality had changed. He was getting sick with these weird infections, like not an ear infection, but like a 2-year-old with thrush, in his mouth, or, a urinary tract infection, which little boys generally don't get.
Right.
Just weird stuff. And I had known as a health reporter, which is what I had been doing for years and years, I knew just enough to recognize that the incredible amounts of liquid he started drinking and then the incredible amounts of pee he started doing was a classic sign of type 1 diabetes. So I called my pediatrician, and she said, I've never seen it in somebody younger than 2, but bring him in so we can rule it out. Of course, when we brought him in, we ruled it in. And if I could, just really quickly, so we're talking diabetes and type 1 diabetes. Let me go ahead and just define all that, because I know it can be confusing.
Yes, please do. Yes.
So type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes, and type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset. And there are actually other types of diabetes, but let's focus on those just for clarity.
Okay.
So both of these involve how the body breaks down sugar into energy. And, it's funny when we tell our kids, right, how do you get energy? How do you, get fuel in your body? And it's eat healthy food and your body will break that down and convert it into energy, right? So when you have diabetes, something's going wrong there. In people with type 2 diabetes, they are unable to effectively utilize the glucose, the sugar that the food is broken down into, right? Because your body, actually, I should have backed up a little bit. Your body releases insulin, which is made from the pancreas. So your body releases insulin, breaks down the sugars in the food, and converts it into energy. So people with type 2, that process is happening, but for many different reasons, the sugar, the glucose is not being used properly. It's not being processed properly. People with type 1 diabetes, they're not releasing the insulin. The pancreas, something's gone wrong. It's an autoimmune disease. So your body has attacked itself. It's attacked these cells in the pancreas that produce insulin, and your body is unable to break down the food, the glucose, into energy. And when sugar, glucose is, and I'm using sugar and glucose interchangeably here, when the glucose kind of circulates throughout your body like that, it's incredibly dangerous for all of your vital organs. This isn't like, oh, too much sugar is bad for you, and in a few years you might get fat. It's no. You have way too much glucose. It is deadly to your body. And without insulin, it is very scary. And without insulin, people with type 1 diabetes will die within weeks, possibly days. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. But, right. So that's it. So what happened with my son is he was having these classic signs of type 1 diabetes. He was, your increased thirst because your body is trying desperately to flush out the glucose, increased urination, and he lost body weight, because your body's basically eating itself for fuel. So once we figured out what was going on, we were very lucky. He hadn't crossed into the incredibly dangerous part of diabetes that becomes immediately life-threatening. We were able to go home in about 3 days after some education in the hospital. And then we were in this whole new world. Here's a bunch of shots for your kid. Here's you must take insulin injections or infuse insulin through an insulin pump. You've got to check your blood sugar, several times a day. So here's my not yet 2-year-old maniac who had ripped, we used to call him like the baby Hulk. He ripped all the sensors off of him in the hospital. And, so now we've got to figure out what to do. So it was bananas. And I started a blog about a month later because my listeners wanted to know more about it. And it wasn't the kind of show where you could really share the stories. It was more,
you're talking about your radio
traffic.
show.
Right, the radio show. It was like news, weather, traffic, let's get on with the business. So I started the blog in 2007. And then when I left radio, I actually wasn't sure that I was going to start the podcast right away, but I'm a really avid podcast listener. I've been listening to podcasts since you had to actually use your iPod and plug it into your computer. That's where you get the name podcast.
You're an original.
Oh, it's a little scary. And you couldn't do anything, without, there's no Bluetooth, blah, blah, blah. You had to plug everything in. So I was listening to different diabetes podcasts, and there are some wonderful ones out there, but they didn't have that news element that I was looking for. They were more, here's my
Mm-hmm.
personal story, here's my personal story. And I wanted somebody to talk to healthcare companies and give me the latest news and really do kind of more in-depth interviews. And that's when I realized that if I wanted to hear that, I was going to have to do it myself. And
Yeah.
that's the long story. Sorry about how I started it.
No, I love that. Well, I know that, it's something that, like I said, in looking through all of the episodes that you have and the guests that you bring on, it's a really powerful lineup because it's like, if you're looking for information about diabetes, you have a vault of information because you've been podcasting since what, 2015, I think is what I saw. Yeah. So,
2015.
4 years of. That's amazing. So, did you have any, and this is another place where you can educate us, did you have any family history? And is this something that comes from family history? Or is this just kind of it's your own body just not quite getting it right?
It's a little bit of both. Generally speaking, we had nothing. We had no family history that I knew of. But a few years later, my cousin was also diagnosed. So now we're kind of thinking maybe there's something that we just didn't know about,
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's more, and this is a layperson explanation,
Mm-hmm.
It's more if you look at your family history and you have autoimmune disease history.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because your
type 1
body's kind of
so we have a lot of
attacking itself, I
autoimmune.
guess?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Autoimmune diseases happen when your body just makes a mistake. They're not it's not exactly sure what's going on. It mistakes something healthy for a virus or something else that it needs to attack. And it can be triggered by a virus. It starts to try to heal you and then it goes bananas and overdoes it. But we do have a family history of autoimmune disease. Interestingly, on my husband's side of the family, there is a large family history of type 2 diabetes. But we were told that has nothing to do with the chances of developing type 1. They really are very, very different conditions. They wind up doing the same things to your body, and a lot of the treatments are the same. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in. But in terms of how they start and genetically, there really isn't a lot of relationship there. So unfortunately, it is unknown. There is a wonderful group called TrialNet, and there are some other services in different countries and other programs here that are trying to learn more about the genetic links, and ultimately the idea would be prevention of type 1 diabetes. But so far, no autoimmune disease has ever been prevented. They haven't figured out how to do it. It's really difficult. But we are learning more. There are genetic markers that they found in these trials, in these tests and things. And we just did a show on it. It's funny. We just did a show with TrialNet because they were, for the first time, able to show that they could prevent the onset of type 1 for 2 years, which doesn't sound like a lot, but was a huge, huge breakthrough in terms of autoimmune conditions. So it's really, it's complicated and interesting and also, in a way, kind of discouraging. But hopeful. I'm very hopeful about that last study.
Yeah, well, I would hope that, if it's 2 years now, then, the more research they do and the more they put into it, then, 10 years and then 20, it might come to a point where it snowballs a little bit. So that's good. So what has been the hardest or the scariest thing about your son getting this diagnosis? I know that's probably a big loaded question, but.
It's a great question because type 1 diabetes is a relentless condition.
Yeah.
What you have to do is every time you eat, you must take insulin. Every time you exercise or, take a test at school or get behind the wheel of a car, anytime you have any kind of stress, your blood sugar can change. So you're talking about a life where you have to really do all of these things. It takes up extra time. It takes up extra effort. It's really, the scary things when they're younger is a low blood sugar going to somehow trigger something dangerous? Is he going to fall and hit his head? Is a high blood sugar going to make him feel terrible and in the long run be more dangerous? But I'll tell you the really hard thing, I think, for me, and I can't speak for people with diabetes because I don't have it, is just that mental, relentless, thought that I alluded to. You can't take a day off. You can't ignore it. You can't push it aside. I get a break every year when he goes to diabetes camp or he goes on a vacation or an overnight or something. But it's with him 24/7. And if he chooses to ignore it, he's going to feel it. He's going to feel it now, and he's going to feel it later in terms of, health problems. So it's a scary condition in that immediately, if you don't take care of yourself, it can result in, an immediate consequence. But also, I think people with type 1, they're forever feeling like, am I doing enough? Am I doing this right? It's
Yeah.
so hard to get it right. I mean, being your own pancreas will show you just how amazing your
Yeah.
pancreas is. It's an incredible organ. It does, the amount of balancing between insulin and glucose in your own body when your pancreas works is this incredible dance. And modern insulins are great, but they're slow. So you have to give it like 15 to 20 minutes before you eat to make it work really
Oh,
well.
okay.
And
Wow.
when you're 14 and you're going out to have pizza with your friends,
Yeah.
maybe you forget,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So things like that
scary.
happen all the time. And it really is fine. I mean, I don't want to get, I don't know, we could obviously talk for hours about it. But to answer your question, I think that the scary things I used to think were those short-term mistakes. But now I
Hmm.
think the hardest part is just the mental time and effort it takes for my son. So I really hope that we've given him the tools he needs to, have a great life with it and not
Yeah.
focus on it every second of the day. It's tough.
Yeah, that does sound tough. How old was he when you felt like he had a little more autonomy and, you felt like you could let him go out with friends and kind of
Yeah.
could expect that he could understand his body enough to manage it?
Well, I know you talk to lots of moms who have lots of different
Mhm.
experiences on this show. And it's funny because every community kind of has their little things, right?
Right.
When do you stay at the birthday parties? When do you leave? And with
Yes.
type 1 diabetes, it kind of throws all this other stuff into it. So I felt like in first grade, I could really start letting Benny kind of go to a friend's house after school. And I joke
Yeah.
because, he used to call me and he would say, well, we're going to have this snack. And how much insulin should I give with my insulin pump? And, he really knew what he was doing, but you can't let a little kid do that unsupervised. And I joke because I found out what everybody in my neighborhood served for their after school snack. And, there's a lot of families that do this differently than you might. So,
Mhm.
there's the pizza that's on the counter all afternoon. There's the family that brings home 2 dozen donuts a couple of times a
Right.
week. And there's the family that has all of the Entenmann's treats in their pantry. My kids, I swear they were friends with this one kid just because he had the oatmeal cookie sandwiches in
Yeah.
his house. Right. So we're trying really hard, like, to keep the sugar content kind of down. I mean, with type 1
Yeah.
diabetes, you can have treats, and we managed it. But it used to crack me up because I would be like, wow. And these kids in these houses, most of them didn't even eat the stuff. I guess maybe because it was
Right.
there all the time. They didn't care. It was very funny. Very
That
funny.
is funny. Yeah, because it was so available,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
and
who
not being able to
knows?
be there.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. But as he got older, I mean, we've really had to decide year by year. I mean, he is 14 now. He's going into high school. And this is the age where a lot of kids, really in 8th grade around here, they start going to the movies. You drop them off, they walk around the
Mhm.
shopping center. And we have not held him back. Anything that our older child did, we've allowed him to do as well. We've figured it out. I mean, it's not always
Yeah.
perfect, but we've let him do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like he's very responsible and has learned a lot about it. So you mentioned diabetes camp. So that piqued my interest. So tell us what diabetes camp is.
So this summer, I said to a friend, they said, oh, where's Benny? I said, he's at diabetes camp. And they said, oh, that sounds so sad. And it cracked me up because it's the greatest thing in the world. Now, I'm a huge camp proponent anyway. I went to summer camp my entire childhood, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, gone.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I wanted the same thing for my kids. So I wasn't sure how we were going to do it with diabetes. So every year since he was about 7, we have been able to send Benny to a week-long diabetes camp in North Carolina. The American Diabetes Association and lots of other groups, we have the Diabetes Family Connection here in our area. They run these usually week-long, sometimes longer, camps. And it's usually just a regular outdoor camp, zip line, swimming, hiking, whatever. But everybody has type 1 diabetes. And usually almost all of the counselors and staff have diabetes.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, you're not sitting around in a circle saying, how did you feel about your diabetes today?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but there is natural learning going on. Okay, we're going on a hike. What do you need to bring?
Yeah.
Or you swam
Yeah.
for an hour and you went low 3 hours later. Maybe we can learn from that. And it's
Yeah, that's
amazing
great.
because, yeah, and it's safe. You don't have to worry about your kid. You know that everybody gets it. So you know that if his blood sugar goes low at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody's on that.
That's incredible.
It's
Well, and
really
it sounds like they're
amazing.
learning, I mean, those are life skills, to be able to
Exactly.
just do life, kid activities and then kind of see how your body reacts to it. So that's great. So what would you say to a mom whose child was just diagnosed with diabetes? What would be kind of your first response to that mom?
Okay, I got two things.
Okay.
It's going to be okay.
Oh,
And
I love that.
And please, for the love of everything holy, stay out of giant Facebook groups.
Oh,
Because what
okay. Tell us
happens
more.
So I'm sure as a mom, you have run into this. There are a lot of closed Facebook groups out there for
Yes, there are.
everything you can think of. I'm in a great one about like less stress in middle school, which I have to get out of now because I have no more middle schoolers. There's a really cool one about college. My daughters go to college. So there's really good ones. But there are an amazing amount of wonderful parenting diabetes Facebook groups. But if you're newly diagnosed, these can be very scary places because you'll have 20,000 people in a Facebook group. So you're only hearing the worst and the best. So people never post boring day, right? Well, it was okay. Everything was fine today. They'll post back in the ER. This happened. I can't believe it. What am I going to do?
Oh my goodness.
I tried my insulin pump broke and I didn't know this, or, you have to eat low carb or you're going to damage your child. And it's so many messages that are so confusing that if you're newly diagnosed, it really isn't helpful.
Yeah.
And, these people we support each other, we help each other, but I think social media is wonderful and terrible all at the same time.
Yeah.
Not to get on the soapbox, right? I mean, there's amazing support. And I've actually gone to it myself. And as I mentioned, like that 2:00 in the morning low blood sugar, I've gotten support many times in the middle of the night from other moms of kids with type 1. But my advice to newly diagnosed is please just stay away, listen to your endocrinologist, listen to people you know in person, and then maybe in 6 months to a year, dip a toe in that water.
Yeah.
It's scary.
That's great advice. I can only imagine, that if you open up your Facebook on your phone and your kid is doing fine, but that's all you see is this, ER visit. My kid, hit their head because they, it was too low. Like that would just, I think as moms, we carry enough worry and anxiety without all of that. And then to add a scary diagnosis and now all these scary stories, you just can work yourself into a place that's not good. And
it's
so
like
I think that's great advice.
It's like Googling when you have a cold or an injury or something else. You find all the worst case scenario.
I know. It's like WebMD gives everybody a brain tumor, immediately.
Exactly. And I don't want to pretend that type 1 is easy. But, the question that I get asked almost without fail from newly diagnosed parents is, well, how many times has Benny been back to the hospital? And you can tell me. And he's never been back. We've been very lucky.
Oh, yeah.
But he's never been back. Well, that's a big lie. He's been back, but not for diabetes. He's been back because he did dumb stuff as a kid.
Because he's a boy.
Oh, yes, you know.
Yes,
oh my
yes,
gosh.
I have too. Yes, I know. That's funny. When you think about, we were talking about the research that's been done, and when you, with what you've learned through your podcast and being a mom to a child with type 1 diabetes, when you think about what's needed to progress especially the prevention of diabetes, but also the treatment and the kind of the general care for children with diabetes, what do you feel like is most needed? Like, where could people spend their, donate their money or donate their time towards moving this forward?
Well, a couple of years ago, I would have answered this in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I think the answer now is, unfortunately, we're moving a little bit backwards. We need to figure out what is going to happen to the price of insulin before we can worry about really moving ahead with research. We are so lucky as a family. I have great health insurance. We have fantastic technology. I've mentioned an insulin pump. My son also wears a continuous glucose monitor, which is this incredible device. He wears it in his arm. You can wear it anywhere in your body. It's got a little wire under the skin, and it sends your blood glucose numbers to your cell phone. So I talked about like poking his finger a million times a day when he was a baby. He never pokes his finger anymore. He's got his blood sugar. It's amazing. He's got a blood sugar on his phone, and I can look at it on my phone, which is good and bad for him.
Yeah.
But, we have amazing technology that is making people healthier and happier. And really, living with diabetes is not easy, but it really is much more precise, which is going to mean better health outcomes in the long term. But the price of insulin has gone up 300% in the last 15 to 20 years. It crosses party lines. I'm not trying to get political. It doesn't matter who's in the White House, who's in Congress, the price keeps going up. And that, without insulin, I mentioned it right at the beginning, you're going to die. And unfortunately, we're seeing, it's very scary. We're seeing adults, and half of all people, more than half of all people now with type 1 diabetes are adults. You can be diagnosed at any age. And also, you can luckily grow up and have type 1 diabetes.
Right.
So I would urge your listeners, if you want to learn more about that, there is a campaign called Insulin for All, the number 4, and it's a hashtag, on Twitter or Facebook. T1 International is a great group that's doing a lot of work on this. But Insulin for All is a hashtag to follow if you'd like to learn more. I have no quick and pithy answers for you about it, but it is to the point now where people are rationing insulin and really having issues with it. So luckily we haven't had that problem. It is, that's exactly it. It is terrifying. When you get over the age of 26 and you're kicked off your parents' health insurance, a lot of people are struggling. So I'm extremely hopeful. I mean, to answer your original question, holy cow, there's so much great research going on. I just like to bring that up because until we get that settled, it doesn't matter how great your CGM or your insulin pump is if you can't get the insulin to put in it.
Yeah. That's the baseline of what's needed for sure.
But man, beta cell regeneration, where they take the cells that are missing in your pancreas and they're able to implant them, from somebody else or from, I can't think of the word, from stem cell research. Oh my goodness, I couldn't think of the word for a minute. Things like smart insulin, where you would do one injection a day and it would know exactly when to release.
Oh,
things like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool stuff coming. So I am very, very hopeful. And I'm very excited as to what's in my son's future. Even better, insulin pumps. The insulin pump he currently wears communicates to the continuous glucose monitor that's in his arm. And if his blood sugar gets too low, the pump cuts off the insulin. That's brand new. It's about a year that we've had that. It's been absolutely amazing. So lots of good stuff is coming.
Well, it sounds like things are certainly moving, but I'm glad that you shared that about the insulin issue because that's the baseline for what's needed. So that's really important. Yeah. And I'll link to that hashtag and all of that as well. So folks, if you're driving or listening and you need to go back and catch that, we'll link to it. Hey friends, popping into this episode to remind you to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. You can also sign up for my monthly newsletter for secret posts and bonus content at www.melissaduncan.com/join. Now let's get back to the show. I was listening to some of your episodes of your podcast, and I love that one thing you say is that you talk about not trying to be perfect as a mom. And I think you mean not only for moms of children who are managing diabetes, but for all moms. And so I think we can all appreciate that. But I'm curious kind of how you got to that place as a mom and what that means for you on a day-to-day basis.
I'm so lucky because I knew that perfection was not an option before I even had children. I have a wonderful, please. I have a great mom. I'm very close to both my parents. And I never remember talking to her about it, but she was just this great example. She worked and she started her own business when I was 16. And she didn't make dinner every night after she started that business. And, it wasn't perfect, but it was great. And so I kind of knew innately that somebody else's vision of perfection. I had a friend and his mom always decorated their house for every season. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. But my house wasn't like that at all. And I didn't care. It wasn't something I missed out on. So when my kids were born, I never had this perfection thing where I felt oh my gosh, I've got to make sure everything is spotless. I can't go to sleep if there's a dish in the sink. I can't go to bed if the mail is on the table. That was never a problem for me.
Yeah.
I was very focused on, and I laugh all the time because I say to my kids, I gave you other skills. I wanted them to love reading, which I failed for my son. He still doesn't like to read.
Oh.
We tried. But we read
It'll
and we
catch
read
on
and we
one day.
read. Yeah, we went to the library and we read books and we would do arts and crafts and we would travel as much as we could. So we did what we could. But the problem with being perfect, or at least trying to fulfill this idea of what it should be, is that you can never get there.
Yeah.
So I think, and I still have a lot of moments. And my daughter, as I mentioned, she is going to college. This is her, she's out of here this year. This is it. She graduated
That's
high school
exciting.
in May. It's wonderful. And I keep thinking, is she going to be okay? Did we do enough? Are we ready? Is she ready? And you can't. You just have to go with it.
Yeah.
So, my kids, we laugh, they didn't miss the perfect home with the beautiful, some of my neighbors with their beautiful decorations and their beautiful lawns. And, I think it's whatever makes you happy. If you enjoy that, I'm not trying to put it down. I mean, I think it's great. But I was never one to pack a really pretty lunch and, put beautiful messages in. And, it's like, here's your food. I'll see you tonight.
Well, we are kindred spirits because I think my children, even at their young ages, would tell you that we don't live in this little picture perfect house. And it's funny because, I feel like those pressures on moms have just increased even more with social media. I agree with you that social media is both, it has two sides. It's both beautiful because of the connections and the support, but it can also be a place that I think brings us down pretty quickly. And, when you log on to Instagram and you scroll and you see these houses with these beautiful decorations and you think, well, I'm not doing that. But it's like, well, who said you had to? First of all, and it's like, I decorate for 2 holidays at best. And it's like, Christmas, and then I might catch another one somewhere throughout the year that gets a couple of decorations thrown up. And I love seeing pictures of people who can manage every holiday. But it's just not something that is practical. And I think once you let that pressure go, I think that is a beautiful thing. And so I love that that's something that you talk about. Sorry, I think I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. It's such an interesting topic. I'm like, I can't wait to talk. When we mentioned, social media, I'm very lucky in that my kids are 17 and 14. Mm-hmm. So we missed the childhood Instagram pressure.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We did not. I kind of get upset sometimes because I'm like, I would have had so many more followers if I could have posted all these cute pictures of my kids. But, at the same time, it's like, well, my kids are really happy that their pictures aren't all over Instagram.
Yeah.
But you miss those opportunities for like the first day of school and all the signs and the cute outfits. And I think there's so much more pressure on parents now to post those kind of beautiful pictures every single time something is going on. And I was at an event, a diabetes event with a bunch of influencers. I am definitely not an Instagram influencer. My thing is audio. I don't know about you. I'm in my PJs. I don't know. My hair's not done right now. There's no makeup on. It's fabulous. But I was asking this beautiful woman, super glamorous. I was like, how do you do that? Every time I see you on Instagram, you just look so great. And I'm a complete Instagram dummy. I had no idea. And she says to me, Stacey, I pay someone to follow me around and take pictures. She said, I probably take 75 pictures for every one you see. Maybe, probably more. And I thought, holy cow, who has that kind of time?
Yeah,
so she's just doing it for her. Can you imagine doing that with kids?
No.
And people do it.
No. And if that's their thing, I respect it. But it's just, I love so much that you give permission to, to moms to say like, hey, we do not have to be perfect. And so tell us about your book because it kind of goes along with that. So it's called I hope I'm getting this right. The World's Worst Diabetes Mom. Is that right?
That is it. That is
okay.
It.
So why that title? Why the World's Worst Diabetes Mom?
Well, let me just back up for a minute. I think one of the real pressures in when you have a child with a chronic condition, especially something like type 1 diabetes, is, as we've said, there's so much pressure on parents already, right? Your kid has
Yeah.
to be a star athlete and get perfect grades and have their hair combed and be polite and, eat 16 vegetables and quinoa and, whatever. There's all this pressure. So with type 1 diabetes, you actually have pressure that is different in that you're kind of getting a grade. So we get these health numbers back every 3 months. And that was hard enough. And people refer to that as their mommy's report card. And you're right, it's so awful. I really counsel people not to do that to themselves. But with the continuous glucose monitor that I mentioned, we get numbers every 5 minutes. And it's really hard not to attach emotions and pressure and grades to all of those numbers.
Yeah.
So, I found this over the last couple of years on social media. I found people forgetting, and it sounds like an exaggeration, but almost forgetting that they're raising a kid and not a number.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
And
I'm sure.
it's so difficult. So people started thinking like, well, I'm not going to send my kid to that sleepover because their blood sugar might be out of range. I'm not going to let this child go out with their friends to the movies because I'm not sure if he'll be able to count the carbs right. Or I'm going to call them 14 times a day and make sure that they know what they're doing. Now, my heart goes out because it's a very serious condition and you want to make sure your child is safe. So let's just say that right now. I'm not saying you should never, check on your child. There are parameters, and I talk about this in the book too. You got to make sure your kid is safe. But then you got to let them go. And I was talking about this in a Facebook group that I mentioned earlier, and it was about a sleepover. And I was like, well, do this or do that, or here's how we do it. And some guy was like, this is the worst advice I've ever heard. You're a terrible parent. And I thought, wow, that's kind of dramatic. Are you sure?
Yeah.
And you're going to kill your child if you continue down this road. Yeah. So I said, I must be the world's worst diabetes mom. And foolishly, I deleted the whole thing because I was so taken aback and insulted. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this. So I deleted the whole thing. But it gave me the idea that, if I'm the world's worst diabetes mom, I know I'm really not alone. So the book is all about all of the mistakes I've made. And in writing it, and trust me, in 12 and a half years of diabetes, we've made a ton. And somehow he's a happy, healthy high school freshman.
Yeah.
So the idea here is make mistakes, give yourself permission because you'll learn from them. Your child is resilient. Your child will be stronger and you can learn from it. So we'll see what happens. It's been well received so far, but I'm still a little nervous about it because, most of the parental advice with diabetes is a lot more cut and dry.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's just incredibly exciting. And I'm sure it'll be a great resource for parents and just that breath of fresh air, and hearing, you don't have to be perfect. And I'm the world's worst diabetes mom is very refreshing. And I don't, my child doesn't have diabetes. So, but even as just a fellow mom, I think all of that is just encouraging and refreshing. So with your podcast, I want to go back to that real quickly. If someone is just, they listen to this episode and they say, I'm going to go, my kid has a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. Let me go check this out. What are a couple of episodes they should start with? Because 4 years of weekly episodes, they might feel kind of like they don't know where to start. So where are some places in your podcast that are kind of a couple of good episodes for a starting point?
Sure. And I would say the best thing to do is go to the website, and I know you'll link that up. There's a search box on the website in the upper right-hand corner. And I would actually put in Benny, my son's name, Benny. We don't talk about him on every episode, but it'll come up on the episodes that are milestones. So when it was 10 years of type 1, I interviewed my whole family.
Oh, okay.
And that was a really interesting episode for me because I talked to my daughter about being a sibling and what a pain in the butt it is when your brother has a chronic condition, the extra attention. My husband and I talked about, what we learned over the years, and I interviewed Benny as well. And he'd been on the show a couple of times. I'd also recommend, like I said, the milestone episodes are good for that. I talked about 12 years, which was last year, and some dosing changes and real routine changes we had made in terms of type 1 diabetes. I like the episodes, as a mom, where I talk to more famous and prominent people about their stories. So we've got Mark Andrews, who's an NFL player. I talked to him at the beginning of the season last year, and he talks a lot about playing high school sports and college sports, which is a really tough thing to navigate with type 1. So I was really grateful to him for that. And then I talked to Victor Garber, who is an actor with type 1. A lot of people know him from Titanic. He's also, more people know him now because he's in the DC universe on television.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
Firestarter. He's been on The Flash. But if you see him, he was on Alias. If you see him, you know him. And he was diagnosed as a teenager before all of this technology and everything. So he's got a great story. But I don't know. I mean, that's just a little sample. I also like the technology episodes. We talk a lot to healthcare companies and technology companies and try to get them to answer questions about their products and let them know what people really want and need in the technology. So those are a few that I would start with, or you could just start with the latest and work your way back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, they're not sequential, so you can just kind of pick what fits with your story or what's interesting to you, which is great. How have you avoided, I'm just kind of a selfish question from my point of view, but how have you avoided burnout in doing a weekly podcast for 4 years?
Wow. Yeah. It's hard. I think probably the number one reason is because I'm so passionately interested in the subject.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do the show if no one listened because I feel like I'm learning a lot and bringing those messages to my family. Now with my son being older, he and I actually talk about diabetes a lot less. So I'll share with him like, oh, I learned this. And sometimes I get like the eye roll. Sometimes he's interested, right? I have to kind of gauge it. So it's a little different. But I think, and you alluded to this very kindly at the beginning, and I appreciate that, where you said it was a well-produced show. I really try to challenge myself. I change it up every year. I try not to get too in the weeds during the year, but I'll change the format around. I do that open tease where I try to make it a lot more pre-produced. I have different segments that keep me excited. I have a segment that I added this year called Tell Me Something Good, where my listeners send me their great stories of milestones and accomplishments, and that's my favorite thing right now. And so if you can ask your listeners kind of to get more involved, and that helps as you move forward, it's kind of hard at the beginning. That's really helpful to me. But I do think because I live it's easy. The trick is to not, now that I'm doing kind of diabetes for my job, the trick is we already have enough diabetes in the house, like not making it the conversation and everything, because everything shouldn't revolve around it. I've got another kid. I've got a kid who doesn't want to talk about it all the time.
Right.
I'd much rather talk about, what's going on in his world in terms of sports and school and video games. And so that's really what's hard about it. It's just not bringing it over into life too much.
Yeah, when it already is a part of your life. Like you
it's
said.
already enough.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you're doing such incredible work. I love hearing this, and you've handled it with such grace. So,
aren't you kind to say so?
You absolutely have. So tell us, as we start to wrap up, I love to hear from moms who are doing something that they are, passionate and excited about. What is a personal or professional goal that you have for yourself here in the last few months of 2019? So right now it's August. So as we look ahead to, third and fourth quarter, what's on the horizon for Stacey?
All right. So my year this year, 2019, my word of the year was finish.
Okay.
And sometimes I would add another F word to it, which I will not repeat here, because I had a lot of frustrations in 2018 of projects that kind of started and stopped. So the big finish was the book, which I had a deadline for. That was kind of easy because once you have a commitment, you got to see that through.
Yep.
So the rest of the year is going to be mostly focused on speaking engagements, which I'm booking out. I do a lot of talks about diabetes. I travel to conventions and things like that. So that's the remainder of this year is going to be spent in book and speaking mode. But I also started working on an app for the diabetes community, and that was put on pause for a little while. That was part of the finish for 2019.
Yeah.
So I will be picking that up again, and I'm very excited about it because it's very difficult to find in-person events. There are lots of in-person events, meetups and conventions and things, but they're kind of hard to find because Facebook is probably the best way to get them out there. And it's just the algorithms are all messed up. So I'm developing an app so we can better find each other in the diabetes community.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So we'll see. Like I said, the word is finish. It might carry over into 2020.
Well, that's okay. But, as long as you're moving in the right direction. I love that. Well, we will look forward to hearing more about that as that comes together. Well, very good. Well, you have been so gracious to tell your story, and just the work that you're doing and sharing this knowledge and information is incredible. So remind us one more time where we can find you online and where we can find your podcast.
Sure. The easiest place is to start at diabetes-connections.com. That'll bring you to everything else, the book, all my social media. I am Stacey Simms, Stacey Simms, on every social media platform except Pinterest, which I think goes to that perfect mom thing because I have no eye for anything. So I'm not there, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
I love it. Well, we'll link all of that below, and look forward to hearing so much more from you and seeing your book when it comes out, and following along to hear more about the app. So thank you, Stacey, and good luck finishing. We'll leave out the other word, but finishing for the rest of 2019.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thanks. Stacey Simms is an amazing mom, and I have so much respect for all she's done to learn about diabetes and to contribute to the diabetes community. I would love for you to connect with me online at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook to continue the conversation or just say hello. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and a written review in the Apple Podcast app. It means a lot to me, and it helps get the show in front of moms who are looking for episodes just like this one. I hope you'll find a way to influence your work or community for good this week. Don't forget, you can listen to other episodes or learn more about the show at www.influentialmotherhood.com. See you next week.